podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Simone Sweeney, and in this new series, Getting Started as a Coach, I'm excited to introduce you to experts and coaching thought leaders who will share their passion and experience to help new and aspiring coaches get the insight and information they need to understand the industry, make more informed decisions, and successfully start out in the world of coaching. In today's episode of Getting Started as a Coach, I'm joined by Gina Lodge as we explore coach training and education. Gina will be a familiar guest to many of you as a longtime member of the AC, where she's currently the lead for the UK, Africa, and India chapters. She is a very experienced coach and mentor and the CEO and founder of Worldview Mentor. Gina is an Enterprise Nation certified mentor and a member of the Association of Business Mentors, as well as a qualified executive coach certified by the Academy of Executive Coaching and a fellow of the Association for Coaching. Having also held leadership roles in Shell International and the Academy of Executive Coaching, Gina is the perfect guest to help us understand the importance of coach training. Gina and I will explore the difference between coaching and mentoring, why we need coaching models, and an overview of some of the more popular models. We'll also look at why coaches should consider their approach to accreditation before choosing their training, as well as other helpful guidance on coach development. Gina also reassures us about many new coaches experiencing imposter syndrome and suggests tools that can come to our rescue. Gina, welcome.
Thank you very much, Simone. It's lovely to be here. Looking forward to it.
Me as well. So I'm going to start by asking you a question that I'm putting to each of the episode guests, and we're getting some wonderful answers showing the many different facets of coaching. How do you define coaching?
Oh, gosh. So I would define coaching really is it's unlocking the potential of any individual. And it's also using a technique which doesn't tell. So it's not like mentoring. It doesn't tell somebody or give them information. It trusts that the knowledge is there in your coachee. And what coaching does is it uses various techniques to bring out that inner knowledge that's already there and help the coachee to find their own way forward and their own answers.
Fantastic how you speak to the nurturing relationship and that it is a relationship in coaching. And I think also very important for the audience, many of who may be newer coaches or are considering moving into coaching, that there is a difference between coaching and mentoring, because that's something that I think a lot of people don't quite see as clearly when you're maybe moving from a professional career into a coaching role.
Absolutely. And it's always good, I think, to compare mentoring and coaching, because people do, quite reasonably get a little bit confused sometimes about what's what and what are the differences between each one. Mentoring, it's an age-old practice, really, compared to coaching. Coaching is relatively the new kid on the block, I would say. And of course, the real difference is, as I've said, with coaching, you're helping the person that you're coaching to bring things out themselves. With mentoring, it's more, you're actually using your experience over a lifetime to help and guide that person. So you're guiding, you're obviously using your resources as well that you've built up over the years. So there's a very strong difference, I think, between mentoring and coaching. But of course, they can be used together. So mentor, coach, people will hear that now quite regularly. And as long as you are really open with your coachee or mentee about what you're doing, what techniques you're using, and are you coaching, are you mentoring? So it's that clarity with your coachee or mentee. It's fine to use both, but again, that to me, for if you're looking to start out as a coach, one of the first things before you begin the training really is to understand all the differences, so that you know that you're not a business advisor. You're whether you're a mentor, whether you're a coach, what style you're using, and just be very transparent.
Fantastic. I think that's great guidance also for those who are looking at executive coaching in particular. When we talk about coach training, what do we mean by that?
So it's really interesting because there are lots of different types of coach training, but let's focus on the core coach training. So generally, I would say, and particularly if we were talking from an accreditation basis, there are two main parts. Like anything else, you need to be trained. Any job, any role you do, there is training involved, if you look at it that simplistically. So with coaching, again, you need to be trained to know what coaching is, what the differences are between coaching, mentoring, and all sorts of other interventions. And then you really need to know the depth of how do you coach. So I worked, as you know, for the Academy of Executive Coaching for quite a few years. And we always started off the real basics, which don't make you a coach, but just to understand what those differences are and what you're not. So you're not a therapist. You're so it's what aren't you, and then what is coaching in that. So going back to the coaching is unlocking what the coachee really has inside, bringing that out and helping them to make the decision. Why is the training relevant? Models. Let's talk just a little bit about models. So there are so many different models of coaching. If you go on, look up Google sort of coaching models, there are so many now in a relatively short time. A lot of them are from about 2000, some older ones just before that, but still relatively new. But all of those different models, you can choose to use them, you can choose to refer to them, but to know that they're all there, to know what types of coaching there are and what your preference as a coach is, because you can now also be an executive coach, but you can choose to work, let's say, in diversity and inclusion. So you can choose your subject as a coach and specialise, be a specialist coach. So again, these are all things that your coachees will need to know and you will need to know when you're at the training stage. So without the training, it's going to be a jungle. I would also go towards saying it's also not really ethical not to be trained as a coach. You wouldn't go to a doctor and expect them to just have maybe read a couple of books and then start practice. So with a coach, I also wouldn't expect someone to just be a coach and having read a few books or had a few conversations with people and think that you understand what it really is to be a coach. So if I was advising anybody, I would say these are things to look for. You need to know really if the coach you're looking at, have they been trained by a credible body? Have they then done all of their coaching practice? So you understand what level of a coach they are, and that's where all the accrediting bodies come in. So it's like anything else, it's buyer beware in a certain extent in anything in life, isn't it? So I would say as a new coach, do your research. There are so many people that are there to help you, the accrediting bodies. There's a wealth of information online already and people to talk to. And look at your community. Think about what community you want. Because also if you're leaving or even staying in a company and want to train as a coach, what's your community? If you're going out on your own after many years in a corporate role, which is, I'm sure people, including yourselves, self-identify with that, then that's really important that you have a community to go to, because starting up on your own in any enterprise is going to be very different. You suddenly realise you have to do everything yourself. You haven't got a company, you haven't got a team backing you up. So, on top of that, having a community in coaching, if you're going into being an executive coach, very often you can find that community in accrediting bodies. Also, when you go on a training program, I've seen so many people with the cohort they're training with, they form such close bonds that very often they say, okay, well, let's start this together. We'll create our own little community and we'll all work together. So there are lots of benefits of training, and I would say it's an essential part as much as getting your coaching hours.
I love how you have spoken about so many of the aspects of coaching there. And I'll just touch back onto the community piece, because I think that's a very important consideration that is probably not a benefit that you see when you're considering and you're making those decisions. And certainly as I undertook my training, and I did my training with the AOEC. So who am I and how do I coach were very, very relative and relevant experiences for me. But that reflective nature of the coaching training, when also taking in that community environment, you're with a cohort of other aspiring coaches, and you do build strong bonds. And when you're transitioning from a professional career, which is the case for many coaches, it was for me, and others who are maybe coming from very diverse backgrounds, having that community replaces the community that you may be transitioning away from, where you had worked in a professional environment or in a team setting. So it is a really important consideration as to what you will get in terms of helping you to learn and building a network and a support structure within a new industry as well. So you've just spoken about the community. What are some of the other maybe less visible benefits that a coach may need to consider when they're thinking about choosing a training provider?
Yes. So first, I would say when you're looking for a training provider, obviously the first stop is the easy one. Go online, look at them, compare what their websites say and everything. Generally, most of the really good coach training companies will also have something like an open event you can go to, free open event, so that you can then, you're not investing too much money just picking out sort of who to go to. But most of these are free, and you can go to an event. A lot of them are online these days as well. But then you can ask all the questions that you have, and also you'll hear other people ask questions that you probably didn't think of. And very often, I know AOEC do this, of course, but they will bring a graduate with a lot of experience back voluntarily to say, this was my journey. So hear it from me as well as from the coach training company, because it's so important for people to find the right type of coach training company for them. I'll talk about models in a moment, because I think that also has a bearing on your preferences, or finding your path as well. So what do you look for? So I definitely look for something like an open event, after you've looked at the website, narrow it down to a few, because there are quite a lot of coach training companies. One of the things, of course, we're talking about executive coaching at the moment. Life coaching, it is different. That sounds obvious, but in my mind, if you put together life coaching and executive coaching as a training program together, you've got two types of people looking for different avenues. So my preference would be to look at either someone that is training you to be a life coach or an executive coach. It's actually easier if you become an executive coach and want to become a life coach than the other way around. It's a very tiny thing to think about, but it's worth thinking about, because if you're wanting to train as an executive coach, then you have got your cohort, or you're all on the same wavelengths really in terms of your journey. Also, accreditation paths. So most companies now that train coaches are affiliated with at least one of the global bodies, ICFAC or MCC. And again, what we did at AOEC is not to make people choose. So you have all three accrediting bodies. That's not essential. It's just, again, just look at the accrediting bodies, and also look at the websites for the accrediting bodies and see what you like about them, because they're a huge support in your industry. They're a huge community there. Lots of resources for you to learn along the way. And I am talking from AC's point of view in terms of, because I know more probably about the offers, but one that attracted me and still does, and I still recommend this to people, when you're a new coach, and even if, and you probably can comment on this, Simone, as well. You can have a wonderful career in a big corporate and be very confident in what you're doing. You do your coach training, and then at the end of the coach training, you're celebrating with your cohort, etc. But then you realise you're out there as a self-employed person and you're coaching. And those two words that we use a lot in the coaching industry, imposter syndrome, is so common. I think it's probably more unusual that imposter syndrome doesn't kick in then. Because you suddenly realise, oh my goodness, I'm going out and I'm using all these techniques and I'm fairly new. So one thing I would highly recommend, and I do all the time, as I just said, AC offer, as part of the membership, co-coaching. So basically you have two coaches, whatever level they are, a pool of people sign up to this. So you coach each other. So you're practicing, you're spending hours coaching people on live issues, exactly the same you would with your coachee in an organisation. That really builds your confidence. So I would say that's a bit of a magic sauce after you've been trained, and when you feel that, oh my goodness, I've got to do this now as well as starting my own business. So accrediting bodies can be very useful when you're a new coach, also for your community, because there are lots of other things. So we're developing a big presence at the moment in Africa and India, and it's really good to, when you start to set up again with people for the first time, all the questions they're asking, again, it's gold dust really, because you see what people want to know. And so we can turn that around and make sure that they get the right information, etc. The same with being a new coach. And it's practice, practice, practice. And the more you can do, the more confident you become.
Fantastic reflection. And it is one that certainly connects with me. You speak to being a new coach and having feelings of, imposter thinking, or also, the pressure or the, let's say, exhilaration at times of being out on your own and having to drive your own agenda and make your own luck in a way. So the tools through the accrediting bodies, the associations, are very valuable. And I love that you mentioned the co-coaching solution. It's something that I've leveraged in the AC community a great deal, and learned a great amount from the people I am co-coaching with and the more experienced coach that's there to support us. So it's a wonderful asset that is available through the Association for Coaching. And the organizations themselves are, I think, vitally important to the backbone of the coaching industry. And we actually have an episode speaking about the coaching associations. So listeners will be able to learn a little bit more. But you have mentioned a few times accreditation, which is the process of being legitimized as a coach effectively, in what is a self-governed industry, which is what coaching is. You spoke of the AOAC being triple accredited and many coaching providers being accredited. What benefit is that to a new coach to be trained by an accredited provider? What does it kind of mean in practice?
Yes, it means that the provider has also taken into account the number of hours you need, the levels of training you need. So really they're taking away a lot of the research and thinking you need to do. So you can just look and say, what level is it? So if you're looking for your first accreditation, let's choose ICF in this case. So generally the first level is going to be Associate Credential Coach, ACC. So it's very clear that, I know where I start. And all the accrediting bodies do this. They have their own systems, but they're all working the same way. So you have a clear starting point. You know where your accreditation starts. So it will be relevant to what you need to learn at that stage and to the application you make for your training. And then, of course, we're talking about a coach that has done their coach training. But if you want to then be an accredited coach, I'll answer the question probably that will come, which is, so why do you need to be an accredited coach? which is, if you're going to coach an organization now, people want, like any application you make to a business, they want to know what your credentials are. And let's be very clear with coaching. You're dealing with big questions very often from people. It's really quite dangerous not to be a coach that is trained and then, if you're coaching on a regular basis, accredited eventually. And you can work through those levels. You don't have to do it all before you start. You can just get, your training, then you can look at your accreditation. But I would suggest anyone that wants to work within a corporation, within an organization, or as an external coach with an organization, that you really do need your accreditation, because I think most these days look at the next level. You have, so if we stay on the ICF path, and you have ACC, which I've mentioned, then PCC, Professional Credential Coach, and then the top level, MCC, Master Credential Coach. So usually the middle, the Professional Credential Coach, is the one that a corporate will look for to say, that's the level of accreditation we expect. So it's also very good for new coaches to know that, even before they start their training. Because if you're looking for training that's already credentialed by whichever accrediting body you're looking at, or all three of them, so it just helps you to have that information as a new coach, so that you know that that's the process, rather than suddenly think, I've just got my coach training, but now this accreditation, now I need to do this. So I think it's just looking at it as a path and mapping out your path and your time frame that you want to achieve that in. And it's entirely up to the individual on that, how fast you go. Yeah, so I think that's really, again, it's another thing to add. Look at your training, look at your credentialing as well. And there's so much information. There's so many people to guide you, though, from each of the accrediting bodies. And although we're very different in personality, we're also quite cooperative. Coaching is a very friendly industry. We all support each other. We all work together in one way or another. So people are very open. We're not telling you something to try and be more commercial and make more income out of people or anything like that. But you'll find that everybody's open to helping and supporting.
That is such helpful guidance for a new coach or someone who is thinking of taking perhaps some professional experience and applying it to training to go onto a more formalized education pathway and look towards being accredited. It was one of the most complicated parts of my journey into coaching, is understanding the different credentialing opportunities, the different associations, and helping to find out which ones would sit with me best. And then trying to kind of penetrate the criteria of becoming a credentialed coach. And you mentioned very specifically that the training programs are effectively a leap forward in that credentialing path, and not the least of which in the area of building your coaching hours, because that is a criteria within, I think, all of the credentialing paths that you would follow. So they do help get you further along that path to being a legitimized credentialed coach. So I think it's a great tip for anyone thinking of training, to think of the benefit of the training towards achieving that accreditation, but therefore them having to understand the path they want to take beforehand and doing that research. And it is great how you say also that the organizations are very friendly and very collaborative. And certainly my experience in coaching to date has been that everyone is willing to help. But reaching out to past students or to the associations or to the training providers themselves is a great tip to kind of find that right fit. And one of the things I think we need to consider as well is the way in which we learn. And, we obviously are in a much more digital and tech friendly way. And that's true in coaching, like in so many other industries today. And COVID has certainly accelerated the potential for learning in a digital space. But what are some of the common coaching training program models that someone may be needing to decide and navigate?
Oh gosh, the models. So I think that's a really good question, Simone, because very soon you will, when you're looking on the internet and everything, you will find lots of different models, coaching models referred to. There are a lot of models out there, so we can maybe run through a few that are fairly well known. I'll come back to another point at the end. What's a coaching model? Why do we have one? Why do we need one? So it's not a need, but again, I think a coaching model or coaching models they're helpful to help you really navigate your own coaching and to support your coachee in a better way, and to give them a framework which is probably more memorable. It's something that you can apply to different circumstances, and it just gives you a bit of a grounding as a coach. I'll mention a few. So the most popular one, which I think nearly all coaches will know, is the GROW model. A lot of these just have sort of, so GROW means goal, reality, options, and way forward. However, I've seen lots of changes to that over the years. So that's, if you see one of the words changed, it's quite normal these days. So sometimes they say way forward, sometimes it can be will, but basically the GROW model, it was introduced, it's one of the early ones, and it was introduced by Sir John Whitmore, who very well known historically in the coaching industry. So that's one of the ones you're likely to come across. There's one called STEPPA, STEPPA. Angus MacLeod, he introduced this in 2003. This focuses on, so STEPPA is subject, target, emotions, perception, plan, and act. So again, that's quite an organised, it's an organised way of looking at a coaching process. So that's one also that's I'm just thinking about the timeline. It does make me think, because there were lots of models before 2000, but actually most of the models started to emerge more after the year 2000 because of the growth of the coaching industry, particularly in organisations, because it's such now a recognised style of leadership. So another one, which came out in 2002, was OSCAR, OSKAR. Paul Jackson and Mark McGregor, I think that one. That's more sort of solution-based and focused rather than client-focused. It stands for outcome, scale, know-how, affirm, action, and review. It's all got this sort of methodology that helps you to understand a process that you might find useful to use in your own coaching practice. So I'll mention a few more and then go back to the point that you don't have to actually know all of these at all. So CLEAR is from Peter Hawkins, which I think a lot of people know, Professor Peter Hawkins. That goes back to 1985, so it's one of the, sort of the core. Peter introduced this to get clients to achieve transformational change. So that's the model was, he really wanted to see, a transformation and people coming out after the coaching interventions with something to say, my goodness, this has been sort of life-changing. It's in a multi-session format. It stands for contract, listen, explore, action, and review. So that's quite a straightforward one, but it does give you a nice basis on which to look at your own coaching model. Coactive, another very well-known one, and they also acknowledge that every person's journey is unique. And I love that, actually. Every person's journey is unique. We're all different, so that's why you have let's select a coach from several coaches, because you need to find your ideal coaching partner. So coactive, they describe it as sort of dancing in the moment, which is a lovely expression as well. And it plays to curiosity, listening, and sort of natural evolve, your coaching evolving naturally. NLP is another one that goes back to 1975. That's probably one of the others, neuro-linguistic practitioner. So I could go on, but I think we'll stop there because that gives you an indication of just a few of the coaching models out there, some of the better known ones. Now, usually when you choose a coach training provider, they will usually have either their own model or a preference for a model. And again, I have to bring AOEC now, not just because I know them, but the difference with AOEC, people always used to ask this, and I'm sure they still do. AOEC don't have a model. So as you'll know, Simone, so what they do is they introduce you to a whole range of models. And then you don't have to choose a model. You can learn from those. But then at the end, you build your own model. So you create your own model. The one fact I would like to share in all the 14 years that I was at the AOEC, and I think it's still the same over the last year, but you never see the same model twice. So that's human creativity for you. So all the coaches that are going through those and building their own. So what's the difference? I would describe it as if you have one model, you put it in your briefcase, it's sitting down beside you when you start your coaching, metaphorically, you turn to your one model. Now, wouldn't it be best to learn lots of models and use the parts that you like or use the model you like in a certain situation? So I think it's just to say it's perfectly okay to learn one model, but be open to looking at the others and seeing what they have and maybe creating your own model in the end. So your authentic coaching.
That was such a fantastic introduction to many of the common coaching models, Gina, and I think will be a really useful insight for people as they think about whether they want a more broad training approach. So they get tasters, as you will, if you will, or they want to dive deeper into a particular style. For me, I always have in my mind that NLP is a much more specialized way of coaching, and I did the taster experience through the AOEC and have followed my own version of Grow, but I have had that exposure and am able to draw on multiple different models as the client need presents itself. And, that's a personal choice, but something that people should be mindful as they think about their training. So, Gina, what are some of the common types of coach training in terms of learning? There are so many different coaching providers and different programs and courses available. Some are diplomas, some are certificates, some take a few days or even hours, I've seen, and others can take many months or into years. What is the difference between things like a certificate, a diploma, a degree course, and the various qualifications at the end that you're awarded with?
Yes, so that's a very good question as well, because it's knowing where you start and finish and what level you want to go to as well. So usually when you're sort of dipping your toe into the water and thinking, okay, so what sort of coach do I want to be? I'm still finding my way. Most coach training companies do a sort of a race starter one for a couple of days if it's face-to-face. Nearly all of these programs now are online, and usually there's an either or most companies also are sort of doing a lot more in the sort of online space because it reaches more people globally as well. So that's a great benefit. So you can go from anything. You could have just a day or 2 days, which give you more information and help you to either say, well, do I want to go with this training provider? Or maybe I'll go to 3 open events of a day and invest that time 1 or 2 days to actually find out, is this the one for me? Because there are different personalities in all of the teams, which is quite natural. You, as a new coach, want to find the one that is a fit with your personality, where you want to go. So that's really important research. And I would say it's very worth investing your time to get it right for you. There is no right or wrong. And there is no right provider or, so I wouldn't give advice like you must go to this person, because I think you need, again, to make your own investigations. So once you've done that part, generally you're looking at probably quite a few weeks of actual, let's say in-school training, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. But to go to the first level when you say, okay, now I can go out and coach and I feel confident, I would say that would probably take, and generally it's broken down. It's not in one sort of bulk training. So you could look at something like 7 or 8 days, but generally spread out so that you do work in between as well. So that sort of type, if you allowed overall, let's say 3 months in terms of your training period, I think most companies that do that first level training you'd complete that within the 6 months. And that doesn't mean, it probably means 7 or 8 days with work in between. That gives you then the confidence and the practice, and for you to then practice alongside that. And you then produce evidence, and there is, homework that you normally get for this sort of thing. Never stops. Coaching is definitely lifelong learning and very interesting, and it's incredibly, I think it's just, once you start learning, you don't want to stop really. And it's all about people. So I think in terms of, then that gets you to be sort of a first-line credentialed coach, that sort of investment in terms of your training time. Then I would say most next level, if you're looking to go on to, the higher level of accreditation, say we were using ICF earlier, so I'll stay with that, so the PCC level, then you're probably looking at investing a year in terms of, elapsed time for your different modules, your training, your submissions. Most people ask you to submit work as well, of course. So I would say you're looking roughly at a sort of couple of days, 6 weeks, a year to go to that level. By that level, you're doing the serious coaching, probably in organisations. And then if you want to go on to a master's level, then it becomes, you're going to increase that time all the time. What a lot of people do as well, of course, is in between, they go and do specific training on one type of model. So just one springs to mind. So trusted executive John Blakey, someone might say, oh, yes, I really want to bring in trust into my coaching. So they could look up and see, well, what John Blakey's offering at the moment. So there really is scope for lifelong learning here. And as long as you meet the criteria that you need to be an effective coach, because, we are, as coaches, we're serving other people, and knowing enough and that sort of credibility that takes away the imposter syndrome, and really just working on your art really as a coach.
Yes, that's great guidance for us. And I love how you speak to coaches always learning and continuing to develop. And one of the acronyms new coaches will face is CPD, which is continuing professional development, if that's a new term that they hadn't come across in their kind of previous career or life experience. And that is that ongoing growth and learning journey that many coaches are kind of naturally curious to pursue. I'm curious to get your perspective on, when does CPD tip over into a need for further training, actually formal education? How does CPD and training kind of sit alongside or collaboratively together?
My view on that is they are collaborative, because you can continue your training journey, but CPD brings in all of those other lovely courses out there that do, just concentrate on one aspect. And again, the accrediting bodies are very good for this. AC have some lovely CPD offers that they put out. And I think the biggest challenge a coach has, if I'm honest, is there are so many to choose from. So it's a little bit like the sweet shop syndrome. which one do I choose? But then I think you have this natural draw to certain subjects and things. And CPD keeps you relevant. It keeps you fresh as a coach. It stimulates how you approach certain issues that come up. So it's this lifelong learning, I think, as a coach. You never stop learning. And I think that's one of the really exciting things. You're constantly seeing, gosh, this is good. And you start to develop your own responses to those as well. And you'll find a lot of coaches then start going into writing and blogging and, all of these sort of get Substack, which is a lovely new sort of, if you want to sort of tell your story and it's in a very human way. So I love those, and I try not to get too distracted because there are some very good coaches who write, and it's almost like having your favourite blog around, that you say, oh, I really like this, or this person's talking about this aspect of, life and how a coach can work with someone like that. So I think it's infectious. I think coaching is infectious. You get drawn in yourself because you see the potential of the landscape of it. So it's limited really by yourself, I would say, and how far you want to go.
I love how you're saying that the coaching and the learning that is kind of innate in coaching is infectious. It's such a wonderful way of thinking about it. And certainly every new thing that you kind of learn and experience leads to another avenue. And all of it can be used to serve the clients that we're building relationships and trust with. So it's that infectious approach is a lovely way of thinking of it. And finally, what I'd love to do, Gina, is ask you what your one pearl of wisdom would be for a new coach. What do you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Oh, gosh. So I would say immerse yourself, enjoy the journey, and you are good enough. I would say you are good enough. That's what people need to know.
What a lovely motivational note to finish on. In today's episode, I spoke to Gina Lodge. Gina spoke about the importance of coach education and training. She touched on how to choose a training provider by considering your eventual accreditation path and how you can get a jump on your credentialing journey by making some considered choices at the beginning of your learning. She also spoke about the benefits and the different methodologies of training, including some of the less considered aspects, like the importance of a community through your learning journey. Gina also highlights how coach training can be the foundation and the scope for lifelong learning that helps us to become more dynamic and curious coaches. Gina, where can people find out more about your practice, about your ongoing work, or get in touch with you, please?
Yes, so, and I will confess on this, just in terms of an update on the website, but it's www.worldviewmentor.com. Please excuse, it's currently undergoing an overhaul. That's where you can find me.
Super. Thank you, Gina, so much for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and giving us some really great practical advice on how to choose a training provider that is right for you, but who is also going to help you along your path to coaching success. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Simone. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organizations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There, you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.